you want to go for it?
Yeah, we got one caller in line. I don't want to make him wait any longer. Is it Eric?
Hello.
Hello.
How's it going?
Pretty good. How you doing, Eric?
Excellent. I'm doing good. Yeah, I heard about your guys' show. Actually, I found it on iTunes.
Oh.
I'm from Michigan.
Oh, all right. So you're calling long distance.
Cell phone, 3 minutes.
Ah, cool.
It's all good. And even if I had to pay, I would do it.
Well, we don't want to make you
Well,
wait
you
too
guys
long.
are show.
So what questions you have?
So, yeah, I don't know if there's anything like this done anywhere else or if it's just you guys, but I didn't see any other podcasts or anything.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're not alone in the fight for reason. I don't know how many other groups are doing shows. I know that American Atheists used to do, and perhaps still does, some 30-minute show once a week or once every couple weeks or whatever. We're the only ones that I know of that are doing, a 90-minute live call-in show pretty much every week. But
and
a lot of it's because
you guys do an excellent job of fielding these calls. I mean, I'm into the science side of it. I'm into the evolutionary side and everything. So I'm not as knowledgeable on the Bible as you, but so I do debate once in a while, but I guess I fall short on that side of things. But I just can't. I mean, I think it's really amazing.
I bet you don't really fall short. I bet you really don't fall short. I bet you just tend to get frustrated that you don't get where you think you ought to get to, and that happens here just as well.
Yeah.
We're I don't know. Is it a problem in the studio? We're losing your phone where I can barely hear you.
You can barely hear me?
There you go.
I hear you now.
There you go.
So did you have a question that you wanted to ask?
Yeah, I guess my general question, I was kind of just hinting at it. Since I do debate a lot, I guess I kind of, like I said, I fall short on the Bible side of things. And right now I'm really busy with school, so as much as I want to read some books on like archaeological finds with the Bible and everything, I just don't really have time right now. So I guess I kind of wanted to get your point of view, having actually read the Bible and knowing as much as you do. Do you know more about, say, like its origins and such that kind of discredit it?
Do I? Probably. I mean, if you go to the ACE website, there's a lecture that I did a year and a half ago on the biblical canon, and I touch on some of the problems there. But I think the bigger point is that you don't have to spend a lot of time becoming an expert in all things Bible, because first of all, Christianity and Judaism aren't the only two religions out there.
Right.
It's like, right now we're seeing a rash of Muslims pointing to the Quran, saying the Quran has revealed all these great things way before men ever discovered it. And the fact of the matter is, it's wrong. It's hogwash. They're reinterpreting passages. So you don't have to become an expert in any of them. The thing to remember is that anybody who's making a claim and using an argument from the Bible or an argument from the Quran, they have the burden of proof. They need to establish that the book is a reliable source that somebody should accept as true. Now, I'm not even sure how anybody could begin to do that, because every attempt that I've seen that tries, and including the attempts that I tried myself as a believer, they fail, and they fail easily, because in the case of the Bible, for the most part, we have no original we don't have any original manuscripts. We also don't know who wrote a great chunk of it. It makes outrageous claims that there's no supporting evidence for. Many of the things that are in the Bible exist nowhere else. There's there's historical confirmation for even the existence of Jesus, let alone the things he supposedly did.
Right.
Some passages are added.
Yeah, there are passages that are added. You don't even have to go outside the Bible to find warnings. Excuse me. Paul basically goes to great effort to say, I'm writing this in my own handwriting so that you know that it wasn't forged. Basically letting us know that the forgeries were prevalent. And from the variety of manuscripts that we have and the differences, we know that there were forgeries going on. The Joannan Comina that reinterprets to invent the Trinity. Those types of things are in there. Is it Mark 16, 9 through 20, the very end of the book of Mark, is all doesn't exist in the oldest manuscripts.
Yeah.
But even if all the manuscripts were good and reliable and the same, and we had them back to the originals, that still tells us nothing about whether or not they're true. For example, if the Bible had revealed something profound and scientific, it still wouldn't be justified. You still wouldn't be justified to believe it because the Bible said it. That's an argument from authority. Once we would have confirmed through reasonable scientific methods the truth of the statement, then it might have an impact on, here's some revelation that people had long before they could have had access to knowledge, and that might be relevant. But the problem is in those old books, you don't see anything like that. You don't see anything that's specific. What you see are passages that people interpret after science has discovered something and said, oh yes, well of course the Bible said this. Well, the problem is that once upon a time people would say that the Bible claimed that the earth was the center of the universe, or that it was flat on 4 pillars, hung motionless in the sky, with a firmament that you couldn't penetrate. And yet, as science discovered the truth, these people went back and did a little revision in their interpretation, found a different passage, and said, see, this passage here says the earth is circular. We had a guy call in, I think it was last week, saying, how do you deal with this, this profound knowledge in the Bible that the earth is circular? It's easy.
Yeah.
It's not circular. It's a sphere. Circles are flat. The idea that it shouldn't even be that hard. The idea that it's somewhat circular is easy. I mean, somebody wrote in and reminded me that we should have just said right off the bat, if you stand up on top of a mountain, you look around in a circle and you see a fairly continuous horizon. It makes sense that ancient people with no other knowledge might come up with the idea that the earth is a circle.
Yeah, okay.
Plus, they could navigate past the horizon. They had eclipses to view. Anybody that sees the shadow of the earth on the moon, right?
Right,
Should have the
exactly.
idea that it's round.
The important thing is you don't need to know anything at all about the Bible, because when people make the arguments from the Bible, the response is, why are you accepting the Bible as a true authority? They have to establish that there's good reason to do that. And if anybody can, that would be interesting, and I'd like to know about it. Because so far, even with the best quote-unquote apologists, I haven't seen anything that even comes close. And were we to find something, it would still need to be verified by the methods that we deem reasonable for analyzing evidence and making good decisions. The fact that some book said something, it doesn't mean anything more to me that the Bible happens to say X is a sin or X is true than War and Peace might say something.
Actually, something I do want to ask, because you just said it a minute ago. I mentioned that to my brother, who's pretty religious, and we argue about this. He said, I said, well, the Bible at one time said this, and clearly that's not the case. What you said about, the earth obviously isn't flat. Does it actually, no, it doesn't say that in there. Does it say that in there somewhere? I mean, specifically?
I know it mentions the 4 corners of the earth in 2 separate passages.
Okay.
And one of the things, in much the same way, okay, what we're talking about a little bit is biblical interpretation. And I try to be as fair and reasonable about this as possible. You can interpret the Bible to say almost anything you want. Right. But what I look for is when somebody's giving me an interpretation of a passage, the more close to literal it is, the more likely I am to think that their view of what the author meant is correct. It's not always the case because you have poetry and metaphor, etc. But when you say that somebody could stand on top of a mountain, or that there was a tree growing on top of a mountain that could be seen from the entire earth, you are describing a small, flat earth. There is no other option. There is no place on the planet Earth that you could put any tree of any size that it could be seen from the whole of the earth. Matter of fact, there isn't a spot in Austin where you could put a tree that you could see it from the whole of Austin. So they're describing a very tiny, flat world, and that's the way their viewpoint was.
Right, and if God was really all-knowing, this offered word of his wouldn't be so fallible like this.
I would tend to agree.
So I guess what I was getting at was I did start reading a book, I believe it's called The Bible on Earth or something like that. And I mean, my understanding
is that Finkelstein?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Is that Finkelstein? It's biblical archaeology?
Yes.
Yeah, I've got it. I haven't finished it, but I was reading some stuff in there. They're going through and kind of showing what what archaeology, what real science does agree with about the Bible and doesn't agree with regard to the Jewish time imprisoned by the Egyptians, which basically we're starting to figure out there's no reason to think it ever happened.
Right. Yeah, because it mentions things like herds of camels back when they weren't domesticated yet, and just random things like that. I guess I just wanted to get your take how many of those types of things you knew if you've read this book. And
I haven't finished the book, but so far from what I've read, they seem to be right on the mark, and at least they're backed with good science and reason, and they're not making they're making claims that they don't go outright to say that this is all false or made up. Their larger point seems to be that we can't, through archaeology, confirm this. As a matter of fact, the archaeological evidence leads us to think that things like this never happened. But that doesn't change the fact that what we're talking about is Jewish history, true or false, that has had an effect on the Jewish people. So they're a little more forgiving, I guess, than I would be about discovering that archaeology doesn't support their myths. But they're not pulling any punches when the evidence isn't there to support it, or when the evidence contradicts it. They say so, and so far it's been a really good book.
Okay, yeah, I'm taking summer classes. I'm still in school, so it's hard for me to keep up on everything, especially since I already read enough books on evolution as it is, and I really enjoy that side of things. I don't think I could honestly sit down and just read the Bible. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't want to do it again either, and I still read bits and pieces of it, but I certainly wouldn't want to read it straight through ever again. If you're looking for something that's well written and quick and gives you some information, oh gosh, I've forgotten his name, but it'll come to me in a second. Bart Ehrman has written, I'd recommend Misquoting Jesus and also Lost Christianities. Both of those look at fraud in the Bible and the way the competing views on Christianity fought, which ones won out, and how they went about suppressing the ideas of the competition. So,
okay.
Thanks a lot for the call, Eric. I'll let you go. Appreciate you calling in.